Um, as you already know, the webinar is going to be recorded. And today we have the great pleasure of having here three experts on biotechnology and environmental issues, who are Estelle Gur, Peter de Brabander, and Steph de Nayer. So please, the floor is totally yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And good morning all in this webinar, Scaling Up Bioeconomy Solutions from Primary Producers Potential to Pilot. And we have this session, as mentioned, together with some colleagues of me who will present further on. But let me start first by introducing you Bioeconomy Giants, the project. And that is as following. So it is a coordination and support action started 1 year ago in June 25. It's a collaboration project of 5 clusters, 6 RTOs, 3 universities, 3 SMEs, and 1 network, as you see. And what is in fact the main objectives? What are the main objectives of this project? Well, in fact, to empower primary producers and rural actors through capacity building. So we will bring you a lot of tailored support tools and direct funding to help you. And what exactly? To facilitate and create and scale cooperative circular bio-based business models, and then to accelerate that. So we will have 30 plus new bio-based products coming out of it, all financially supported via this project. We have different parts of the project. We already have set the scene, let's say, with the expert analysis and mobilizing six clusters and train the trainers program. You can find these train the trainers sessions easily on the Bioeconomy Giants website. So that's already ongoing. But today we are acting with our webinar within this part 2, which is the ecosystem training program, which is also linked to the open call, which is now open already, the first open call, and the Bioeconomy Bootcamp, which will be held at the end of this year in Brussels. But here you see that we have several sessions that we provide during the period, let's say from April to October. And this is the session today about scaling up bioeconomy solutions. Yeah, what is the program of this session? Well, quite simple. We will have scaling bio-based processes, technical challenges and practical solutions. This will be presented by my colleague Peter de Brabander, and then we will have an introduction on SAN, the Scale Up Accelerator Network, given by Estelle Gur, and then I will give you some policy considerations for bioeconomy scale-up and an introduction of pilots for you. And then we will have a short Q&A afterwards. So let's start now with the presentation of Peter on scaling the technical challenges regarding scaling and the practical solutions, of course. So the floor is yours, Peter.
Yes, great. Good morning, everyone. Just let me see if my screen is shared. Everybody can see the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So then to start, just briefly on myself, my name is Peter de Brabander. I'm working at the Biobased Pilot Plant as Business Development Manager. I have a technical background as a bioscience engineer. So I've been through the trenches during my process engineering days of scaling up several bio-based processes. So I know the challenges pretty well related to scaling up and translating, or making up new bio-based processes. Now, as an introduction, so farmers and other primary sector stakeholders, they're an essential industry to sustain the human economy. And yeah, during their work, many waste streams or byproducts are being produced. And while this is now often sent to landfills or it's being incinerated, there are other ways of valorizing these side streams. And yet at the same time, products that you've relied on for many years, they are disappearing. So look at, for instance, the change in the pesticide landscape with the EU banning chemicals for use on pesticides on European fields. And additionally, more and more petroleum-based products are being phased out. Here, a nice example actually is the push from the FDA to switch petroleum-based colorants or dyes that are used, for instance, in food use to biological-based dyes. And these dyes could, for instance, be produced through biotechnology using agricultural side streams. And at the center of all of this transition sits the bioeconomy. Now, why a bioeconomy? And what is it actually? So the aim of this bio-based economy is to perform industrial processes that are economically friendly and resource efficient. And with this, we're talking about, for instance, the reduced or the avoidance of using toxic chemicals, reducing energy, or switching to renewable energy, moving away from petrochemical resources, and switching to renewable resources such as these agricultural side streams, for instance, the use of off-gases like CO2 or certain waste streams. Now, industrial biotechnology offers many environmental benefits, and at the core of these environmental benefits sits the mitigation potential of climate change. And we do this, or the bioeconomy is able to do this because of a couple of factors. For instance, biological processes typically and products typically use lower land and water use. They are less threatening to biodiversity, and they promote basically the circular economy and global resources. Now, just to put this in a couple of numbers, so according to eminent journals, NGOs, the benefits gained by this bioeconomy are pretty substantial. Look at, for instance, the reduction of greenhouse gases. For bio-based products, compared to their fossil counterparts, the emission of greenhouse gases is 45% lower, and up to 80% of non-renewable energy savings can be achieved by creating these bio-based products. Now, the bioeconomy, it's not something small, it's something that's there, it's something that keeps growing. So currently the bioeconomy, the global bioeconomy, is already worth $4 trillion US dollars. And it's projected to grow quite substantially to $30 trillion US dollars by 2050. So looking at the EU GDP, this represents about 5% of the GDP, and it employs already 8% or more than 8% of its workforce. Also looking locally in Flanders, we see that there's a lot of promise in this bioeconomy. And as you can see here, it says that the Flemish bioeconomy is growing twice the speed compared to the rest of the economy. So those are all very motivating statements for the bioeconomy. Now, how does all of this translate to the Biobased Europe Pilot Plant and what we do at the Biobased Europe Pilot Plant, and what is the role that we can play together with partners in the transition to a bio-based economy. And for that, I have to explain a little bit on what we are as a facility. So we are as a pilot and demonstration facility that's used for the bioeconomy. And as our mission, we enable to help companies, stakeholders with this transition to this bio-based economy. And we focus there basically on three big pillars, which is through process development, through process scale-up, and the manufacturing. And the focus of all of these three is different. Putting it in one slogan, so basically our motto is going from grams, so from small volumes to tons. So really making processes and bringing them to an industrial scale and industrial relevance. Just a little bit more on who we are at the Bio-based Zero Pilot Plant. So we were founded in 2008. It took about 2 years to become operational, so in 2010. And looking now, we're 16 years further. We've grown to the largest CDMO, so largest pilot and demonstration facility over the world. And the core of our expertise is our fermentation capacity. So we have a lot of fermenters, 61 different fermenters, going from small vessels in a lab all the way up to large industrial stainless steel vessels up to a size of 75,000 liters to really showcase processes at industrial relevance. Over the years, we've invested a lot in the facility. 18 million has gone into building the facility that we have now. And we worked with over 300 different companies and more than 1,000 projects together. The turnover is about 25 million, and yeah, we're with more than 175 employees. What's also important here is that we are a non-for-profit organization and that we are fully independent. So there are no big industrial players. All of the profit is reinvested in the growth of the company. In terms of quality, because we are able to produce food-grade products, we have the necessary quality labels to bring these food-grade products to produce them here on site so that they can be used for food-grade purposes. And of course, we are located in the beautiful city, or close to the beautiful city of Ghent in Belgium. Now, how can we typically help with companies? And I'll move a little bit later on. I'll move a little bit into the challenges on creating biological processes. But we focus, as I mentioned, on three big pillars. The first one is process development. So this is really looking at, can we perform a process? What's the feasibility of the process? Can it be done at this stage? So that's a really important question to ask before you start thinking, can it be done at a larger scale? Which is what we do in the second pillar, as we look at the scale-up of the process. Here you will typically look at questions such as, what's the economic viability? Can we make profits with these kind of processes? Is it robust? Is it possible to perform it on a larger scale? And that's what we then transition into the last stage as the custom manufacturing, as to really produce these products at the right volume so that they can be used for market introduction, to supply material to customers, so that they can also get a feeling with these new materials. And the technologies that we focus on, I mentioned before that we, at the heart of our facility, is our fermentation capacity, but we focus on several technologies. One of them is pretreatment. So, for instance, the use of agricultural byproducts, they need to be pretreated first before they can be turned into something more valuable or something more useful. And for that, we have equipment and process in place to try out different pretreatment strategies. Biocatalysis, so the enzymatic conversion, of certain product streams as a second core technology of our facility. As I mentioned before, fermentation, so the use of microbes, of microorganisms, to turn sugars that are released during a biomass pretreatment into a more value-added product, as what you do during fermentation. We also have green chemistry capabilities, and of course, the second big pillar is our huge capacity of downstream purification. How can we purify these products, and how can we get them to the right purity for their applications? So all of this is on larger pilot scale, but we can also do some research and development. So you have to start small, and that's what we do in our lab. We have a technical service, we have sufficient storage space to store all of these materials, places for customers to be on site and to witness these processes, how they are being scaled and developed. And we also have a small mobile pilot plant. Now, with this, and in this webinar, I wanted to take some time to walk you through the workflow for the side stream valorization of agricultural bioproducts. Now that you know what we do and how we can help with this, let's dive a little bit into the different aspects of the valorization of agricultural side streams. So there's a couple of steps that you have to go through before you create a value-added product from, for instance, a lignocellulosic matrix. And the first step is the biomass pretreatment. So for that, shortly said, the goal is to disrupt the matrix, so of your agricultural side stream, and to release these polysaccharides to make them accessible for enzymes in the next step. Now, the goal is pretty straightforward, but again, there are many challenges to this first step, because the optimal method is very feedstock dependent. Looking at corn stover, it's completely different than, for instance, a whey side stream product and what can be valorized from that. So different technologies there, and this needs to be optimized according to the feedstock. There are, of course, key trade-off. You have to look at, do I want to aim for maximal recovery? Do I want to generate as much product or as much sugars as possible? But then how does this translate into, for instance, down the line inhibiting my process? Because during this process, toxic compounds can be released, which can have an influence on the second or third step during the valorization of your biomass waste stream. Also, the energy and cost considerations are important one. Are we not putting more energy in there than looking at alternative methods? That's of course important. And you need, as I mentioned before, a very close feedback loop between the different steps, because at this step, you're already introducing certain compounds that can impact the second and the third and down the line parts of the process. So that's the biomass pretreatment, and that's where it starts. The second part is often an enzymatic hydrolysis. So within this step, the goal is to convert the released cellulose and hemicellulose into fermentable sugars. So sugars such as glucose, such as xylose, those are sugars that microbes can do something with this, because these can then be fermented into value-added products. What has to be considered here are the enzyme costs. So you are using enzymes to break down these cellulose and hemicellulose fibers into the fermentable sugars. But these enzymes, they also come at a cost. So here, process development plays a very important role into optimizing the amount of enzyme, the type of enzyme, looking at, for instance, product inhibition. How can we improve the industrial performance of the process? How do we work with high solid loadings, and so forth. What's important here to note as well is that during the hydrolysis, you typically don't obtain a pure sugar stream. You obtain a mix of different compounds. Some of these are inhibitors that you drag along from the first process step, the pretreatment, but some are also the combination of C5 sugars such as xylose and C6 sugars such as glucose, some of which the organisms like more than others. Because that brings me to the third part, which is the conditioning. As I mentioned, you now have a kind of mixed streams. There are some usable sugars in there, but the goal is to produce something that's ready for the next step, for the fermentation process. So you need to produce a clean and concentrated sugar stream. So here again, there are several processing steps that you need to look at. Looking again at the trade-off, making decisions on what is the purity that you need of these sugars, what is the cost that goes into it, how will you do the recovery, and all of these determine the economic viability of your process. That brings us then to the next step. So let's say you've managed to successfully develop a clean sugar stream. So now you look at what can we do with this sugar stream, and then you're moving into so one of the ways of valorizing the sugar stream is through fermentation. So you are converting these sugars into a desired byproduct at a high yield and productivity. The most well-known example here is the conversion of sugars into ethanol, into bioethanol. And that's a process that's been well established, but ethanol is not the only product that you can make via fermentation. There are many other more higher value products that can be produced through fermentation. But again here, it's important to carefully look at which products do I want to produce, which markets am I targeting, because all these decisions have an influence on which microorganism you want to use, and how the process will be developed. So, and that's something we at the Bioeconomy pilot plant can help with. Then finally, you've decided on a product that you want to produce. You have your microorganism. It has been growing very well in your reactor, but this microorganism, of course, it doesn't produce a single pure compound. You get a mix with your microorganism and your reactor medium that has to be purified. So the product recovery is then the final step that we are looking at. And again, here it's a trade-off between the intensity of the product, the purity of your product that you need, and a lot of time goes into development of this downstream process. Now, to make things a little bit more concrete, because this is just the general workflow of the process, we at the Bioeconomy pilot plant, of course, have many projects that we are translating different side streams into certain value-added products. And this is often done in the framework of publicly funded projects. And for that, I want to show a couple of examples. The first example of a project that we have been working on is the LUBCA project. So this is a project that started in July 23 and will run until June 27. So the total budget of the project, of all the consortium partners, is about 5.7 million. And the goal is to scale up the process and to demonstrate the production of succinic acid, an organic acid, and a useful platform chemical from food waste. And the role that Biobase plays in here is to optimize the fermentation process, optimize the hydrolysis, and basically look at how can we turn this renewable feedstock into a value-added chemical such as succinic acid. Another project that we have been working on is the Ellipse project. So this one also started back in 23 and will run until 2027. And again, Biobase here plays the role of a partner for process development and for scale up. So bringing the project up to a TRL of 7, so really industrial relevance. So here the goal is to develop and to evaluate different waste streams and co-processing for novel packaging solutions for the agricultural sectors. So this is a really nice example of a circular project where they are looking at waste streams or side streams, in this case, paper streams and slaughterhouse waste streams, and look at what can we do with this and how can we turn this into something valuable, such as novel packaging for agricultural sectors. To move a little bit more technical, in this case, the side streams and the waste streams, they are collected, they are pre-treated. So for instance, the pulp and paper waste stream is pre-treated by breaking down these matrices into fermentable sugars. First fermentation takes place, after which PHAs, so polyhydroxy alkaloids, are produced that can be turned into bioplastics down the line. Another very big project of us that we are playing the role also as coordinator, and again as process development and scale up, as to turn, as to use sustainable feedstocks and to find applications for home and personal care. And this is together actually with a company, one of our spin-off companies called Amphistar, that's specifically focusing on the production of biosurfactants. So here we are working together with several partners. So a partner that looks at which kind of second generation feedstocks could be relevant for this conversion. We've then worked together with Fibinol that has produced the 2G, so the second generation feedstock. And then we are using our in-house knowledge and our in-house equipment together with the technology from Amphistar to scale this up again to a relevant scale. And as you can see, there's many big players that are interested in this project and this technology. You can see, for instance, Unilever, Ecovert, and Ajinomoto that are part of this project as well. A smaller project, and then I'll move to the last example that I'm actually working myself on, is how can we take side streams and to turn this, for instance, in sustainable pet food, and that's the BioePP project. So here we are using yeast and looking at side streams from the agricultural and food industry to apply these yeast-based fermentation to produce fats. And these fats can then be used as a more sustainable pet food. So this is a more local project. So we are working together with ILVO, with the VIB, with the KU Leuven, and with the University of Wageningen on this project. And that's a project that will finish end of this year. So the results there have been really nice, and there will be a very nice press release on this project at the end of the year. This is one of our older projects, and I think I wanted to include this example as well, is because we have a very nice video showing and to visualize how these product streams look like. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to show the video of this process.
The sound is not included, Peter.
Is it included now? or not?
I don't hear anything yet. Yeah.
Let me see if. Yeah, I think we will do without the sound. There's text on the video, and we can share the YouTube link as well because there's a nice music put on top of it. But I think the video tells quite a nice story on the complete workflow of this stream.
Welcome to Bioeconomy Europe Bioeconomy. We can do amazing things here, like turning this part into the same dial, and all process steps under one roof.
Bark goes into the pulp for size reduction and extreme mixing with water. That's pulp of the value.
Send the pulp through the jet cooker to break open the cells under high pressure. But hey, no pressure, no diamonds.
The chamber filter press separates the woody sugars from the biomass. And now, next step for liquid separation is sun. Oh, come here. Let's bring these precious cookie sugars to the fermentation hall.
Welcome to the piecing house of bio-based Europe Bio. Here is where the magic happens. Using bacteria, glucose is converted to 2,3-butadiene. Constantly monitor the quality of your products and can reduce food rates.
We also have large CSP equipment to purify your products in an efficient way.
To get the butadiene out of our fermentation broth, we use green solvents in our explosion-proof process hall.
Okay. Looking a little bit at the time here, Steph, because I don't know how I'm doing on time.
You are now perfectly on time. So normally 10:35 was the end of your session.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll wrap up here. I hope with this I managed to show a little bit of how these bio-based products are produced, and how we at the Bio-based Pilot Plant can play a role in helping companies with the transition towards the use of bio-based products. And then I'll give the floor back to Steph or to Estelle.
Well, I would propose that we immediately go to the presentation of Estelle. She will talk about the Scale-up Accelerator Network.
All right, so happy to be here today. I hope that you see my screen. And I will try to hit the same nail as Peter on the challenges, but also maybe highlight what we set in place to try to help out the new young innovators, bio-innovators that enters the industry. So as Peter introduced, you realize that there is a lot of questions when you try to scale up, right? There is a lot of different stages, there is a lot of technical challenges, and there is a huge technological risk that you try to decrease from the lab to the large scale, right? So that's really the learning, but as you saw as well, you need more and more CapEx implication, because the bigger the equipment you want to try it out, the bigger it costs. So there's this valley of death that I guess also Steph will hit the nail as well later on. But basically, on these phases, there is a lot of questions. On fermentation, I will maybe add more to what Peter already translated, but basically every parameters needs to be looked at. That way you can have a strong business case, right? So here, the abstract there is to make sure that you have that in mind. I will not dive into too much details here. And if you have any questions, please reach out, because we will be really happy to talk about it. But there is challenging in fermentation, even in the pre-treatment, as Peter mentioned, also in the DSP, and that's not the same challenges. And every decision that you take will influence your fermentation, purification. So basically, there's a lot of technical question to overcome, and that's why the scale-up journey is really, really important. Because you do not look at the same questions depending on the scale that you are at. But when you fail, if you fail at a lab scale or at a smaller pilot scale, then when you're building your own plant, that's make more sense, right? You spend the right money at the right time. You test different unit operation, you test different parameters, you try to map out correctly your process, you validate it, you generate mass balance. Anyway, basically, you are building the knowledge of your process. And that's where Biobase is helping, but that's where also a lot of different pilot plants are needed depending on your process and requirements. And basically, through that valley of death, there is a lot of questions. And most of the time, to start with, it's quite a bit important to ask the right question. And sometimes you don't know how to answer those questions. And that's where we built this scale-up accelerator network. Is to really empower new players to face the question, when is the right time to start scaling up, and what should we do first? So that's basically a mentoring program to help you change being in front of fear or a lot of interrogation into, okay, I'm in the detective mode, I know where I'm going, and I know what should I tackle first. So that's really the ambition of this program, is not to give you all the keys, but to at least help you connect to the right mentors, to review your process, to review your technical question, and help you in answering those questions. This mentoring program is really a small program focused on natural biotechnology to help you achieve and accelerate the path to market, to make sure that you're not lost into your strategy, but also you're not losing your momentum, because when you're in front of an investor, you need to have some interest, right? So it's really relevant to get mentoring. With this program, outside of this program, I really, really request you to seek out mentoring and seek out industrial expertise, because it's really important to gain confidence and to reassurance on your process scalability. That way you can challenge your own technical roadmap and optimize it, but also de-risk the time that you will spend in the valley of death. The The SAN program is focusing on technology because that's what we want to tackle. There is nice incubators in the world, in Europe as well. There is nice accelerator program as well. There is nice clusters that can help you out. But sometimes there is technological questioning that remains unanswered, at least via those programs, and that's why the SAN program exists. And it's really to base the question on your need. So a review of your process flow diagram, of your mass balance, any question that you could think of on a unit operation that you want some advice on, this program is for that. And we have some opinions at Biobase, right? But we also seek opinions externally to make sure that the startups are not only focusing on one aspect of the scale-up journey. And that's why we are onboarding external experts to really help you out. So it's experts that already failed, and already have scars in the industry to make sure that you're not doing the same mistakes. The three experts that the program is based on is Michael from BASF, and he has a strong expertise in DSP. I could talk a lot about their career, but I don't think it's the point here. Alex, which is based in US, and basically has way more of a holistic view on the process, but also some knowledge on the cosmetic application and some food applications, which are way different than just chemical 2-3 video, for instance, that Peter showed. And Inyas, a strong expert from Cargill that he retired years ago now, and basically focus on fermentation on his knowledge. And here I wanted to give you some example that we already have helped a few startups, few young innovators that were asking helps and mentoring. And the first one is an agtech company. So as Peter mentioned, you can, as of today, have some biocontrol companies that can really help on addressing the needs of the agricultural requirements, but via fermentation. And this startup asked to review the DSP strategy because that's where the COGS are really expensive, meaning that you're losing a lot of money if you're not choosing the right unit operation. And they wanted to have some assessment, and basically with 6 hours of mentoring, they were able to flag the important points. They could not ensure those points, but they had the strategy to ensure those in the coming month. And that made a lot of sense to close the first round in front of their investors as well, because they could leverage the questions to them and say, we can ensure them within a few months with the right partners. So I think that's really a good example to highlight there. Another one is more focusing on the cosmetic industry. They had some lab fermentation data and some DSP data, and they really wanted to set up just a review to make sure that they were not on the wrong priorities. And I think this review made them really well aware of you cannot start thinking too much about DSP if your fermentation is not great. And that's really something that was highlighted by this 10-hour mentoring, where the gaps were identified, and actually they had to walk way more into the fermentation space before even entering the DSP discussion, which are still important, but you cannot start working on it too fast if you don't lock the correct titer for your fermentation. The last one that I want to highlight here, it's more a startup that was looking at pivoting between a platform approach versus a specific product approach. And that's an instrumental question, right? And to ensure that, one of the experts had to sit down with them and to really highlight, if you want to switch to go for a product approach, then you have break or make points on a data point of view from an engineering perspective that you need to think of on the biggest picture with the end in mind. And those questions needs to be answered before you presenting your case in front of your board or in front of your investors. So the SAN program is for that. And I hope that you are interested to be part of it. And we don't have like deadlines. We really want to have just a startup with a young innovators that have a clear desired output, with some really focusing on the industrial biotechnology sector, and please reach out. It's basically, you just need to raise the point on the technical question to me, and I will reach out back with the expert. And what is interesting is that the advice are for free if you then start to scale up at Biobase, because overall it will credit you a note up to €4,000 to get back those advice as a credit note at Biobase if you scale at Biobase. So that's, I think, quite an interesting program to start looking at the priorities and make more sense when you're confronted to this value of them. So I hope that was clear. Steph, I saw that you jumped online, so I guess my time is off.
Yes, but thanks a lot, Estelle. It's interesting to know that we have a network of experts that can support you in your scale-up journey, not only with the facility, of course, and the infrastructure and the knowledge and the expertise present in these infrastructures, but also the experts behind it. So that can help you to move forward. Now we are arriving at almost, we still have two parts, some policy considerations. Policy, of course, quite important. And what is the importance and what is ongoing? That is what I would like to show to you now. Let's move on and put the presentation on the screen. Voila. And here we are. So it will be a bit navigating support, regulation, and market uptake. Let me mention that first, that we are at a quite interesting momentum in Europe because the focus on bioeconomy becomes much bigger. And it started already a year ago, let's say last year, with the Commission presenting the new bioeconomy strategy. And that means that we really want to go of replacing fossil-based materials, of course, but how to do that in a practical way? What are the solutions? What is the support that we provide in the sectors such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, aquaculture, and so on? And we have, of course, a strategy with different elements, but the element that I want to stress today, this morning, is mostly the scale-up and innovation part. Which is, of course, important. You can have a lot of innovation ongoing in the lab, but the deployment, the impact, the industrialization is very important. But the question is, of course, how will this strategy support investments to scale up this bio-based materials and products? A good example is the Circular Bio-Based Europe joint undertaking, which is a project program. It is ongoing since 2014, and here you see some figures. So it's input from industry, so money from the industry, but also investment from the European Commission in a private public partnership, where you see that there is a leverage of 3.5 euros of private investment for every European euro funded. A lot of projects, but also large flagships. Flagships means we go to industrial scale. You have a large financial support of millions of euros to really implement it to a first of its kind activity. There is a large participation of SMEs, of course, and a focus on it. And it is a bit de-risking the investment, because that is a bit what is today the difficulty. We still see that investors are quite reluctant. It's CAPEX intensive. this activity, there is still a lot of risk. We need to get it down. That is what the colleagues explained a bit. But yes, we also need to get the appetite of the private investors. And this is a bit de-risking it, helping it further. I was present at the stakeholder forum of CBGU. That was in March of this year, so only 2 months ago in Brussels. And one of the key takeaways was regulation can enable market creation, because of course you can make a lot of products, but at the end, if you are launching your product on the market, you need market uptake. And how can regulation enable this market uptake? Well, I just want to give you here some examples. An example from the US, perhaps not well known, but yeah, the Food and Drug Administration. That's Trump's administration, let's say, to make America healthy again. They decided 1 year ago to ban and to remove petroleum-based food dyes, colorants, and to make that happen. So that means we move to bio-based colorants. And we immediately see, you see that on the right side, a lot of investments, new investments ongoing. These are only 5 examples, but if I now look at the pilot and demo infrastructures in Europe, we see a lot of colors moving on in upscaling activities, because the focus is there. There is a potential market, because there is a ban in the US, meaning that there is an opening to use bio-based colorants. So we see an immediate effect of a regulation on the market uptake. Another example, and that is, yeah, if we look at, for example, the US area, around 500 active pesticide ingredients used in agriculture application, 500 since 1970. And if we look at these approved in US, already 72 of them are now already banned in Europe. We are in Europe very good in banning harmful pesticides. That's great. If we then look at, yeah, but if you create and develop a new biopesticide here in Europe, you need, of course, an approval to get it on the market, to start selling it to farmers. But before you can do that, you need an approval. And this approval, this biocontrol registration phase that you need to go through, this gives you an overview on how much time this takes. And if we then look at comparison, well, in US, for to have your product on the market and approved, you need 2 or 3 years in US and China, more or less. That's still doable, because in the meanwhile, you need to have your investors supporting you, of course. And in South America, we even see 1 to 3 years. So we see now a lot of developments and applications, projects, new biopesticide products coming to the market and starting to be used on the market in South America. And that's, of course, because the time to market is much smaller than, for example, in Europe, where we see that it takes 7 to 10 years. So that is also regulation that can help, of course. Scaling up requires targeted financing. That's also an issue and a challenge. But I can also mention, this is a new article from the Commission from the 10th of June, which is quite recent, not only a few days ago, because new initiatives are, let's say, are launched to push and to boost the bioeconomy industry. And what are these initiatives? Well, we have, let's say, this bioeconomy, Bio-Based Europe Alliance, BEA, which will mobilize 10 billion in corporate offtake commitments, which has been launched now recently. So you see 10 billions, mobilizing 10 billions is quite a large amount, huh? And that will help create predictable demand signals. That is very important to go to the commercial scale, of course. What is also now in deployment is the Bioeconomy Investment Deployment Group, because we see that there is support in the financing. You have different stages on your way towards industrial scale, and we still see funding gaps. Sometimes we see gaps where no funding and no support is present. And also for that, the Commission launched now recently. They had their first meetup in Brussels earlier this month, the Bioeconomy Investment Deployment Group. So you will hear more about these, let's say, activities and really a push forward. So we see that what are the benefits for farmers and foresters and fishers? Well, there is an untapped potential, and we clearly see that that there will be this will be fairly rewarded, as mentioned. So there is a lot of potential. You can do a lot of things with the biomass, primary feedstock, but also secondary feedstock from agriculture and forestry. But Europe also wants to ensure fair rewarding. This is the last, let's say, example of an initiative. We have the Interregional Innovation Investment Instrument, and here this is recently launched by ESMEA. And here I just give the example of one of these ongoing projects or support projects, the I3 for bio fertilizers. This is an example where 30 SMEs will be financially backed by cascade funding to really go to offering this go-to-market support, which is quite important. So that was a bit in a nutshell. Very quickly, some examples. I want to finalize with mentioning that we in Europe have a large network of open access pilot and demo infrastructures. You need to go from lab to industrial scale. And how can you do that? Well, of course, you can put up your own pilot facility and lose a lot of time and money to do that, but you can also use, as example, for example, the Bio-Based Europe pilot plant. But we have in Europe more than 125 open access shared pilot and demo infrastructures. Open access state of the art, multi-purpose, and multi-purpose means they are covering all these technology areas. You see a lot of different technologies in the bioeconomy because fermentation is not the same as algae cultivation, as pyrolysis, as material technologies, textile fiber spinning or polymerization, chemical conversions, and so on, cell cultivation. You see a lot of different areas, but we are covering with all these infrastructures, all of them. And the bioeconomy is going to scale up with the support of these open access pilot and demo infrastructures faster, cheaper, and better. Faster because they already have the equipment present, cheaper because these infrastructures are shared, they are used for multiple customers, and better because they not only have equipment, they also have the people with the expertise aboard. The scale-up expertise, of course, that you as an innovator often don't have. We have a platform that's called Pilots for You. You can search on this platform and find all these facilities and their different technologies that they cover. We do a lot of communication activities, of course. So I would suggest to follow Pilots for You on LinkedIn. And we do a lot of activities as webinars as today, but also open days, study visits at pilot facilities all over Europe, and pitching and matchmaking events, because we strongly believe in on-site activities. So that is my last slide. Yeah, these are some activities, as you see here, a lot of them all over Europe, with pitching and matchmaking events, with pilot and demo infrastructure fairs, and with study visits. But also, if you would be interested to connect with these facilities and to pitch your innovation, for example, or to get connected to investors, bioeconomy investors, I would suggest to also attend the end of November and 1st and 2nd of December, the Pitch Perfect and Boost European Bioeconomy event in Brussels, where you can connect with all of them. And that is, yeah, I will leave it here. You will find the slides and receive the slides deck after this session, of course, where you can find a bit what is ongoing. Let's now move to questions and answers, Q&A. This Q&A session is now open. Let's now take, let's say, maximum of 10 minutes to answer your questions. You see two names, Stef de Nayer and Janzu. Janzu is not present. It's my colleague, also involved in the Bioeconomy Giants project. But if you now have questions for Estelle, for Peter, or myself, feel free to let us know. I don't see any hand raised or nobody into a question.
Okay, Steph, Estelle, Peter, thank you very much for your presentations. It was a great pleasure to hear from you. In case anyone in the audience have some doubts, please do not hesitate to write us or directly to the speakers. And I think we can conclude this interesting webinar. And thank you very much all for your attention, and the speakers for your nice words today. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.